Boop boop, Graham. What was that?
It's the monkey deflating,
Oh,
losing air.
I was passing.
I'm really running out of.
I know. Yeah.
I panic every time you say "oop oop." I was like, "What the hell am I?"
I'm always amazed you don't prepare something. You do it on the spot each time.
That's right, I do. I don't know what I would prepare.
Maybe, yeah, interesting. So I'm here with Dr. Graham Sanders of the University of Toronto.
And I'm not an inflatable monkey. That was just an impression of one. And I'm here with Raywat Deonandan, professor at University of Ottawa, who is an inflatable monkey.
Just on weekends. And we should mention our affiliates. We have an association with Checked, CHEKD, which is a company out of New York that offers in-home blood testing and other medical services. To check them out, go to sciencemonkey.ca/CHEKD. As well, to check out our books, which are excellently well written. Oh, they're so well written.
Excellently well written. Yeah.
Yes.
don't take that characterization as evidence of being excellently well written.
It was superblifyingly goodly expressed.
We write English good.
Goodly. Go to sciencemonkey.ca/Amazon. And
so you said affiliates in the plural. So we are our own affiliates? Is that what
why
you
not?
mean? Okay.
Why not? We have an affiliate relationship with Amazon as well, as many people do. So if you go through our link and buy anything off Amazon, we'll get a piece of that.
So Science Monkey could be the portal to Amazon.
That is
for
correct.
all of our
That is correct.
listeners.
Yeah. So, last episode, we learned that the Romans use what as mouthwash?
Urine, but not just any urine. Urine of Portuguese people. Yeah.
Right. So, continue on that theme. I think today
It's a wonderful thing.
we're going to talk about other things involving tooth care and that controversial element called fluoride.
We also learned that you're eating grapefruit eroded your enamel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you
So
for
your teeth-
reminding me of those painful days.
So what's going on with your enamel now?
It wasn't as bad as I let you
Oh,
believe.
okay. All right.
But I use, sensitive toothpaste.
Right.
Now I feel so exposed and vulnerable now.
Just like your teeth.
So fluoride is one of those controversial topics like vaccination and other things where there's always a strong contingent in the population that feels we shouldn't put fluoride in water. Do you know why that is?
Why they feel that way?
Yeah.
Because they love conspiracies. Anything the government does. These are the same people that look at contrails in the sky and think that they're...
Well, fluoride is toxic. It's
of course.
a neurotoxin.
I looked it up.
Oh.
You have to... 10 milligrams is the dose, which is considered up to 10 milligrams a day is fine. And then to be lethal, I think the lowest dose they have counted as 5 grams.
Per person.
Per person.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So the difference between 10 milligrams and 5 grams is huge. And supposedly we'll get 1.4 milligrams of fluoride if you drink 3 liters of water or something like that.
Well, scientifically, fluoride is on the same column as iodine on the periodic table, I think. Someone's going to correct me if that's wrong. And iodine...
Barry Westcott will. Yeah.
One of our friends, Barry Westcott, is a superstar chemist.
And we ingest iodine all the time. It's in my salt, right?
Exactly. Well, the government puts iodine in the salt to prevent thyroid disease.
The government. That's what's getting people upset.
Yes.
The
And the government puts
doing
fluoride in the water to prevent tooth decay.
Right.
But because fluoride and iodine are chemically similar, and iodine is quite toxic if misused, then people assume that fluoride behaves the same way.
I'm not assuming, I know everything's chemicals, even natural things, organic things, they're all chemicals.
All things are chemical.
And many chemicals at a certain dosage will be lethal, and other doses will be
water
nutritious
is lethal at a certain dosage.
or benign. Right?
Yeah. Oxygen is lethal.
This is an analogy, but alcohol, you have 1 or 2 drinks, it's a food. You have 3, 4, 5, 6 drinks, depending on your tolerance, it's a drug. You have 20 drinks, it's a poison, right? It all depends on your dosage.
I sent Graham 2 papers this morning. The first one is called Are Fluoride Levels in Drinking Water Associated with Hypothyroidism Prevalence in England? A large observational study of GP practice data and fluoride levels in drinking water from 2015. And it's an analysis of 2012 data.
Right.
that looks at 2 locations in England, one with high fluoride concentration, with low fluoride concentration, and attempts to draw associations with hypothyroidism prevalence.
Underactive thyroid gland is what we're talking about.
That's right, yeah.
Which leads to growth problems?
Well, exactly.
Tired all the time?
That's exactly what it leads to. An underactive thyroid can cause weight gain. It can cause hair loss, fatigue, depression, all these wonderful things that we both suffer from.
Right. It's the fluoride, damn it. I know it is. Fluoridation is the most monstrously conceived and dangerous communist plot we've ever had to face.
What are you quoting there, Graham?
Dr. Strangelove. We should insert the actual...
We are going to insert the actual
clip.
Because Graham actually checked, and we're legally allowed to. So we're going to do that.
It's all about proportions. Since that clip is such a small piece of the entire movie, it's a very long movie, so we could actually probably get away with more of it.
Have you ever heard of a thing called fluoridation? Fluoridation of water?
Yes, I have heard of that, Jack, yes. Yes.
Well, do you know what it is?
No, I don't know what it is now.
Do you realize that fluoridation is the most monstrously conceived and dangerous communist plot we have ever had to face?
So you want to describe the study?
Yeah, the study, to me, has one big question that I'm asking. It seems like a small sample, first of all, 2 communities. So they had a community in Greater Manchester, the non-fluoridated area, and in the West Midlands, the wholly fluoridated area. And they reported that the people in the fluoridated area were twice as likely to report high hypothyroidism.
That's right.
There could be a ton of different things going on in West Midlands that would cause hypothyroidism. Yeah. So to compare these 2 populations and then to say there's this correlation. And then they go on to say that hypothyroidism is a major health concern, and the findings of the study raise particular concerns about the validity of community fluoridation as a safe public health measure. That's irresponsible, I think, to have that conclusion based on looking at these 2 communities alone. So
I always like to look at who the researcher is, and this individual happens to be an economist. And economists can have extraordinarily good statistical techniques and abilities, or really quite poor ones. By the way, he has now since moved and is now a associate professor at the University of Toronto. Yeah, he's one of your people now. And my issues with this have to do with the statistics.
Okay.
And how they design the study.
You're the expert. You can even say statistics properly.
I can't. Here we go. See, I can't say it.
Now that I brought your attention to it.
I think that's a sign of intelligence. Only dumb people can say statistics correctly.
Statistics.
So this is not only an observational study, it's what's called an ecological study. Have we talked about that before?
No. So ecological, to my mind, is something about the natural environment, but it seems like it's a little bit different here.
That's not what it means here. Right. So an ecological study is one in which the unit of analysis isn't an individual, it's a population.
Isn't all epidemiology about that?
No, well, we can study populations, but within those populations, we're analyzing individuals. For example, if I follow 20 smokers and 20 non-smokers for 10 years and see which ones develop cancer, that's a population study, but I'm looking at the experiences of the individuals in that population.
Okay.
An ecological study, I don't drill down into the population.
I see.
So say I look at crime rates in different countries and correlate them with the gun control laws in those countries. That's an ecological study. So the unit of analysis is the country, not the people in the country. So this is an ecological study. It's comparing populations, not individuals. So you were right in pointing out that we don't know what the actual individual experiences are. Right. We don't know why this person is hypothyroidism. It may have nothing to do with.
Yeah.
So
and also there could be different reporting rates for hypothyroidism.
Oh yeah, I mean that's so, just, we're on the surface here. What's wrong with this study? So going back to the ecological studies, though, is there's something called the ecological fallacy that comes out of ecological studies, and the ecological fallacy is this temptation to say things conclusively about individuals, even though you're only talking about their populations.
Right. And that's because we want to make all knowledge useful, so relevant, right? So they think that their study is not going to have any compelling argument unless they can bring it down to...
The example I give my students is, this is a real study. We looked at, in the province of Ontario, communities with high numbers of dairy farms or farms in general are also communities with low levels of allergy complaints.
Right.
So the conclusion is, well, maybe there's something about exposure to farm animals that's protective about allergies. And that's true, there is.
Yeah. Your immune system is challenged.
Exactly.
Yeah.
However, that doesn't mean if you're a kid living in Aurelia, you're going to have no allergies.
Right.
You could be the guy that has allergies.
Yeah.
So we can't make predictions about individual behavior. We can just start the conversation about possible associations. Right. And I'll also like to say this is the basis of racism, actually, is making assumptions about individuals based upon observations about group behavior.
Right. Yeah.
It's interesting. So that's the first thing wrong here. The second thing wrong is there is, like our episode last time where we talked about confounding, there's a lot of confounding here as well. We don't know what other factors may be at play in showing associations between living in this community and having.
And it's a fairly short-term study too, isn't it? It's 2012.
2012, exactly.
One year data. 1 year data, two relatively small populations. There seems to be a lot.
Here's a question. Yeah. They had access to all British data, but they chose two communities.
That stood out to me as strange. Because there could be all sorts of things about Greater Manchester which could lead to high hypothyroidism. That's almost as hard as to say as statistics. I haven't looked at a map, but I'm assuming Greater Manchester is a densely urban area where the West Midlands is not. Mm-hmm. So there's going to be more access to health clinics and doctors. There's going to be a higher detection rate for this sort of stuff.
As a non-statistician, let me ask you something. Mm-hmm. If you had access to all this data, but you choose two extreme points to analyze, does that suggest to you that we are allowing a kind of bias to interfere in our analysis? Like, what kind of bias do you think this introduces?
That's a bias when you want to find something and then you go look for the two data sets that prove what you want to find.
So when you select extreme examples, you are biasing towards rejecting the null hypothesis. You're more likely to find something than not.
Is that a selection bias? Is that what that's called?
Well, this case is a selection bias, and it's also a little bit of regression towards the mean. If you did this 1,000 times, you'd probably find fewer and fewer associations. As an aside, when I was working with the U.S. government 10 years ago or something,
Black Ops mission.
I was asked to do a report on hyperthyroidism.
Oh, hyper.
Right.
Okay.
So I spent 6 weeks writing this report, but I was distracted by other things. I was living in Washington D.C. 9/11 had just happened.
Wow.
I was building a career on bioterrorism commentary, and that was taking up all my time. So I submitted my report, and then I was called in for a meeting with my superior saying,
"How did that career work out, by the way? The bioterrorism."
Well, I'm a brown guy living in Canada now, so make your own conclusions. So,
anyways, I never knew that you were branding yourself as a bioterrorism pundit.
I did some lecture work. Anyway, so I was brought with a meeting with my superior saying, "Sir, a good report, but we had actually asked you to write one on hypothyroidism."
Oh no!
Oh, I guess my tenure here is coming to an end soon.
That's like something out of The Simpsons. Don't. We'll just change hyper to hypo, and then
just put a not in front of all the verbs.
Right. Just invert all the results. Oh man, that's kind of funny. Actually.
So this study. It's
I'm curious. Hyperthyroidism. What are the symptoms of that? Are you like a lot of energy, very low weight, or you never sleep?
Yeah, actually, hypertension, high blood pressure, and it's actually quite dangerous.
Right.
In fact, a lot of hypertensive cases are misattributed to hyperthyroidism and vice versa. And the first thing they test you for, if you've got high blood pressure, is maybe you've got an overactive thyroid.
Right. If you have low blood pressure, as I do, should I get my thyroid tested?
As not a real doctor, I have no idea.
Oh, darn it!
Let's go with yes.
Let's go. Yeah, it's always safer to say yes.
And I'm sure a real doctor will call in and tell us, "You guys are idiots," and they'll be right.
Yeah. Why are you using that doctor title anyway? Okay, so
the author, when faced with these criticisms about it being an ecological analysis and not an individual level analysis,
and a biased one because they're using just too small samples.
The data, I'm quoting here, the data was fine-grained enough to not require statistical analysis that could take some of these confounders into account. What
does that even mean? Okay.
It means that they think that they're right, but I don't see any statistical relevance for that.
Right.
But it's so interesting. There's other kinds of issues here.
See, these sorts of studies, I mean, it's probably not as bad as the Wakefield study, the discredited junk study on autism and vaccines. But this sort of study will feed into people who want to believe
Exactly.
in a fluoride conspiracy. Yeah.
The technique you use, this logistic regression, which is my favorite statistical technique. I make all my
You're
students
so
do it.
regressive.
What it is it takes a soup of variables and we essentially hold them all constant
Variable soup.
to determine which ones are most responsible for an outcome. And the outcome has two levels. It's a binary logistic regression. So let's say we've got 1,000 people and we can measure their sex, their age, their education level. They have this disease, they've got this level of stuff in their blood, etc. And the outcome we're looking at is, do they have hypothyroidism or not?
Right.
Okay. So the analysis tells us, well, this factor is this amount responsible. Right. This factor is that amount responsible, and so forth. And they've concluded here that the exposure to fluoridation is a potent factor in this mix. It's a dangerous analysis, though, because how you treat these variables will affect the model. What I'm getting at is they've done a lot of what's called categorization. So they've taken continuous variables and turned them into categories. So, for example, I may know your age. You're 25, right?
Yeah.
So, and
I look at
and I convert that 25 to 18 and under, or over 18.
Right.
So I've created a categorical variable with two levels out of a continuous variable, which is age.
Right.
And we do this for convenience reasons, and maybe it's more meaningful because 18 has a realistic meaning in our society. But when we go from continuous to categorical variables, we lose information.
Right, yeah.
If I know you're over 18, I don't know that you're 25.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this study has a lot of categorization. And they've made these categories fairly arbitrary. They've cut off, for example, levels of fluoridation. They decided this cutoff is extreme and this cutoff isn't, without giving a reason for it.
It's similar to the BMI study that we looked at in the last episode, in that if you just move what you call healthy BMI a little bit, then the whole effect of the study is nullified.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And so it's so dangerous when you deal with multivariate statistics without being very careful about justifying every decision you make. You're going to bias your model one direction or another. And I think that's what's happened here. It's a very biased model.
Right.
And it's poor statistics.
Is there any reason someone would be doing this?
You can manufacture.
Is this person a consultant for the anti-fluoride?
Well, he's a colleague of yours now,
Okay,
so I'm not going to go down that road.
But I just out of curiosity, I went onto YouTube and I typed in fluoride because I think going on YouTube and typing something in, a lot of people get their information from these viral videos. Right? So I went to the videos that had like 16 million views about fluoride, and they're all part of this. Fluoride is bad for you. Fluoride is a poison. And they'll use arguments like. Well, it says here in the toothpaste, you shouldn't ingest too much of this toothpaste, but why are they putting it in our water? And stuff like arguments like that.
Or the theory that, they drop the oxygen mask in the plane because oxygen is a drug that will stupefy you and they want you to knock you out when the plane is having problems. Right. That kind of logic. So the last thing I want to say about this particular study is that is a boring statistics observation again. Okay. So the outcome,
unlike all the scintillating, fascinating stuff we've been talking about so far.
So the outcome variable here, as I said before, is a binary level thing. So either you've got hypothyroidism or you don't.
Yeah.
They had the actual prevalence numbers of hypothyroidism. They chose to go with this distinction between presence and absence rather than looking at the actual prevalence, which is a continuous variable.
Okay, so at a certain point, they just cut off. No, so how is there a spectrum of having or not having hypothyroidism?
Because they're not looking at individuals having or not having, looking at tertiles, which is, if
you just made that word up.
No, tertile is a subdivision of 3.
Tertile, okay.
Right?
I like that word, tertile. It's like tertiary, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So instead of saying more than half have it, in this population, we say that the top tertile is this amount.
Top tertile.
I know, right? When you separate,
we should have a mascot called the tertile turtle.
Tertile is very rarely used. Usually it's quintiles or quartiles.
Quartiles, yeah. And what do you call just half? Half. Yeah. There's no like bitile.
The cutoff is a median.
Okay.
By choosing a top tertile as their cutoff here, they've automatically biased themselves to finding something.
Oh, okay.
Real, We like to be conservative in statistics and err towards the continuous outcomes, so you can see gradated levels of influence rather than these.
So when you see a study that has done this sort of thing, it sounds like at least 3 things going on that would bias the results towards finding a correlation between fluoride and hypothyroidism.
Right.
that seems to be evidence that they're already going in looking for something, and they're
or looking to publish.
right.
You know,
Okay.
like I'm guilty of it as well.
I see.
My grad students.
No one's going to publish a study that says, "Oh, fluoride's fine." Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, they can, but not in a journal anyone's going to read.
And it's not going to go into the media either. Right?
Like I'm hesitant to attribute nefarious intents on these people.
No, that's what I'm driving at. I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I don't. I more attribute just clumsiness,
Right.
and maybe they need to consult an actual statistician rather than an economist.
Right.
In my experience, economists are not very good statisticians.
Right.
I'm not a very good statistician.
Yeah.
I consult good ones.
Right. Right.
You know, so that's the danger here. But we have a second paper here that's on the same
It's
topic.
a meta study, right?
Yeah, let me just bring this up here if I can. It's called Developmental Fluoride Neurotoxicity, a Systematic Review and Meta-Analysis.
That's a bit scarier, fluoride neurotoxicity.
Right, and this one looks at an association between the amount of fluoride in the water and the IQ of children in those communities.
Right. And the premise, the background, they say, fluoride may cause neurotoxicity in animal models, and acute fluoride poisoning causes neurotoxicity in adults. Right? Very little is known of its effects on children's neurodevelopment. So I'm assuming acute fluoride poisoning are very high levels of fluoride. Right.
Say that again, sorry?
The phrase acute fluoride poisoning
Yeah.
seems to be dealing with very high levels of fluoride. So
Right.
is it to say if we give people a bunch of fluoride,
Buttload.
it's toxic, therefore it's got to be bad when we give them a little tiny bit? I mean, that's kind of what's
Sort of.
the assumption that's behind
Yeah.
this. I mean, fine, go find out, but
I find your
As I said
humanities approach to this interesting because you're sort of uncovering this subtle psychological motivation and maybe an unexplored semantic force that's caused people to think a certain way that we haven't thought about before in epidemiology.
that's what I was intending to do. Yes.
That's a possibility.
All right, back to
Well,
back
this
to the
again,
science.
This again is a meta study, as you mentioned. It's a review of 27 studies. So again, we have the possibility that the selection was inappropriate,
Right.
but I'm not going to go that deep into it. I think some of the issues with this one are first is that the papers they looked at are old.
Right.
They're at least 10
And many
years
of them are from China as well, which I thought was unusual.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a Chinese scholar that's looking at this.
Ah, okay.
We'll get back to the Chinese thing. That's kind of important here.
Okay.
But the old papers are relevant because recent studies are more accurate.
Right.
So
We hope.
Well, they are in this particular field, according to some of the reviewers I've
okay.
read.
Oh, you're not speaking in general terms. Recent studies are
No,
always
in
more
this particular
accurate.
field.
Okay.
In this particular field, recent studies are more accurate. And so it's curious why they've erred on the side of the older studies.
Right.
When we have newer ones that are more important.
Right.
But the Chinese, I think, communities have more fluoride than we have in our water supply. So their results are not necessarily applicable to North American conclusions.
Right.
That's the first thing to consider. The second is, this is also something of an ecological
Also,
study. Go on.
many Chinese cities are quite polluted.
Right.
Yeah. So we're not dealing just with everything's the same in China and other cities.
So I'm reticent to criticize these authors because they haven't phrased their conclusions in the same declaratory fashion.
Right. Right. Yeah.
In fact, I'm going to quote one of them here. It says, "Our review cannot be used to derive an exposure limit because the actual exposures of individual children are not known." Okay. Misclassification of children in both high and low exposure groups may have occurred if the children were drinking water from other sources, for example, at school or in the field. Okay, so we don't know anything about these people really.
Right.
And plus, there's a possibility that these communities with high fluoride are also communities with low income or something else going on. So all kinds of possible confounding errors could happen here.
Oh, the conclusion. I don't think we told them, the audience, what the
I'm
conclusion
sorry.
was. Yeah.
Yeah, what is it?
Which is high fluoride levels in water are associated with lower IQ in children.
Right.
Okay.
So entirely possible that just low-income areas are more heavily fluoridated,
right.
for reasons that a number of socioeconomic reasons you can imagine. And low SES is associated with low IQ for educational.
What is SES again?
Socioeconomic status.
Okay, thanks.
And socioeconomic status is a measurement of education, income, and social class.
Right. How do they measure that last one?
Oh, it's complicated. So everyone does it differently. The British are really big into this.
Right. Of course they would be.
So they actually
they invented class.
They actually have tables of, if your profession is this, we rank you this way.
Right.
So someone like a priest may have a low income but high social class.
I see.
Or a military officer will have low income and low education possibly, but high social class.
In England?
In England, yeah.
Police officers don't have high social.
No, military officer.
Military officer. Oh,
Right.
okay.
Whereas a professor would have low income, high social class, high education.
That's why I got into this field. For the status.
Yeah, so there we have it with fluoridation, and other stuff. We have a few minutes left for some questions, some facts and furious. You up for it?
Okay. I'm just...
Unless you want to talk some more about fluoride.
No, ecological studies.
Okay.
The value of them. It sounds like there are a lot of problems with them. Yeah. So is the value to identify an area which needs further inquiry?
They are the beginning of wisdom.
Right. Okay.
So one ecological study that I did, I looked at female empowerment and revolutionary status amongst Arab Spring countries. Okay, so what we did, we looked at Arab countries that either had revolted or in the process of revolting or have yet to revolt. And we looked at UN indicators of female development, things like number of women in parliament, number of women with minimal education, etc. And we found a few things. We found certain indicators were associated with revolutionary status. So, in fact, the more women there were compared to men, the more likely they were to be involved in revolution. Does that tell us anything? Nothing. It tells us nothing. Right. It doesn't mean that these women are involved in the revolution. It means nothing. But it begins the conversation that maybe there's a role for gender politics in political upheaval. So it answers no question. It allows us to ask more questions.
Right. Because I won't be convinced about the fluoride conspiracy until someone actually demonstrates the mechanism of why a small amount of fluoride, long-term exposures to small amount of fluoride would affect your brain or whatever they're and until they can tell me that, then I'm sort of like, okay, fine, go back and study it more.
Your inability to understand this clearly indicates that you're ingesting too much fluoride.
My precious bodily fluids are at risk. I don't deny them enough. Okay.
I want to finish off with one...
fact. No, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, fact. A completely unrelated question. Anyways, I find it such a fascinating question. Who is the first person in history whose name we know?
This is a good question. I mean, would something like Adam in the Bible count?
No, an actual historical figure.
Actual historical figure. First person in history whose name we know. I'm going to go with an Egyptian pharaoh.
Let's break it down. So we'll start the part of the world.
Yeah.
So Middle Eastern is a good guess.
Yeah. So it's either like a Mesopotamian, Egyptian, like Sumerian, like that sort of...
You're absolutely right. That is exactly the right civilization.
Let's go for Sumerian.
Okay, that's correct.
And then now let's go for someone that would have a record. So it would have to be royalty or someone associated with royalty.
That's interesting.
That's
interesting. And it's not.
Is it a scribe or something?
It's so interesting that we think it'll be a military leader, a scribe, an
maybe
artist,
it's some merchant in a cuneiform ledger or something like that.
It's an accountant.
An accountant, there.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it has to be some sort of financial record done in cuneiform.
So there is actually a tablet called the Kushim tablet. And it's 5,000 years old, and it's in Iraq. And what it is, it's a receipt for multiple shipments of barley. And it reads 29,086 measures of barley, 37 months, signed Kushim.
Kushim.
Yeah, and people don't know whether Kushim is an individual or a consortium.
Right.
They think it's an individual. So he is the oldest name we know, an accountant.
An accountant, yeah.
Now,
So wait, the name is not the merchant selling? The name
no,
is the accountant
it's the guy
who
who wrote
made
down.
the records.
Well, maybe it's the merchant, we don't know,
Yeah.
but definitely it's the guy making accounting notes. And then after that, the next two names that we know, about a few years later after Kushim, were someone named Gal Sal and two people named Empop X and Sukalgir.
These sound like Babylonian things.
Well, the Sumerian.
Yeah.
And Gal Sal is a slave owner, and the other two are his slaves. So
the slaves' names were recorded.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah. And a purchase receipt, essentially.
I guess because there were products that were being sold. So okay.
So recorded history, the first people we know of were an accountant, a slave owner, and two slaves.
And two slaves.
I thought that's amazing.
Yeah, that is. That's kind of cool. Kushim.
Well, that takes us to half an hour. So until further notice.
Until further notice, I need to prepare. Can we call what you just did the benevolent
Oh,
Emporium of Celestial Knowledge.
sure. Is that what we call it now?
I think it's-
the Emporium of Benevolent Celestial Knowledge.
We should know the names of our own
We
segments.
know nothing. Which is actually the subtitle of our podcast.
That's right.
We know nothing.
We know nothing. All right, on that note,
This is Monkey Ray.
Monkey Graham signing off.